Well, let's get into some of the big stories of the week with Barnaby Joyce. Welcome to the show, Barnaby.
Thank you very much for having me, and I couldn't agree with you more what you're saying about the Afghanistan cricket team. It's our one chance of actually having a positive input into the mainframe of Afghanistan, and we're shutting ourselves down. Why did we do that?
Exactly, and I was surprised to hear that they had consulted the federal government. Presumably the federal government agreed with them. There's really no other opportunity to perform any kind of soft diplomacy with Afghanistan. Why would we turn up this opportunity? I don't get it.
It's insane. It's, as you're dead right. And if you want to keep on the right side of the Afghanistani people, then how about you support their cricket team, which they all love? You know, it's our great connection with Afghanistan as we speak now, seeing that our troops are out and we're going to throw it in the bin. I don't get it.
Nor do I. Now, of course, one of the big stories floating around this week was Labor's carbon credit scheme. What was your reaction?
Oh, we're back here, isn't it? We're back to this sort of Groundhog Day. It's 3 times what Julia Gillard's was. And I don't know, do they just want to destroy the economy? Is this what we're trying to do? We've got to realise that the reason we have the standard of living that we do is we put product on the boat. We put coal on the boat, gas on the boat, beef on the boat, cotton on the boat, iron ore on the boat. And that brings the money into our nation that allows us to go on and pay for the NDIS, sustains our GDP, your health, your security, your defence. Yet what we are doing is a wholesale attack on basically the economic reality of our nation. Now, some of the things they're going to tax, for instance, is the last 2 oil refineries. When you think petrol's too cheap, do you? You want to pay a bit more for it. Go into your fertiliser. See, well, you think food's too cheap at the moment, do you? And especially power, fugitive emissions from coal. But what do you think? Your power's a little bit too cheap. You want to loosen your wallet up a bit more and fork a bit more out for this kind of, Peter Pan type of economics that Chris Bowen exudes as he prances around the chamber. We have to become as strong as possible as quickly as possible. And what we're doing when we go down this sort of, as I said, Peter Pan economics, we just hurt ourselves. And that's what's going to happen with this. And the rest of the nation and Southeast Asia will just sit back and laugh at us.
Well, you've got to ask, at some point, does hurting ourselves actually become the whole point here? Because we keep doing it. We know that if you introduce these carbon credits, they're going to be passed on to the consumer. And as you say, whether it's through your energy, it's through your food, we are going to pay for it at the same time as people who are investing in renewable energy with great government subsidies are making a lot of money. The whole point seems to make us poorer, really.
That's right. Well, look, there's no trick to this, viewers. You are the bunny in the headlights. When all these new carbon taxes come on, there's not some sort of mythical company out there that says, well, we'll absorb the cost and just suck it up and tell our shareholders to go and get lost. And they've got to do stewardship. So what they do is they put the price of this crazy tax onto your bill. So it goes onto your power bill and your fuel bill and your food bill and your every other bill. So the people who pay for this tax, I hope it feels great feeling righteous, is you. You pay for it. And I don't know, in Annandale and in the directors of superannuation funds and people who had a charmed life and now live in executive positions can have their soirees and tell the world that they're saving the planet from a G&T on their yacht. But you pay for it. And does it make a difference to that?
Well, as Keith Pitt said this week,
And does it make a difference to that?
It's basically betrayal of the high-vis class, right? And what happens in regional areas that depend on coal under this government? I mean, they're being
it's not
hung
just
out to
that.
dry.
It betrays everybody. See, what happens in Australia is we don't understand that 8 of our 10 biggest exports actually come from mining and agriculture. You got 2, I think you got banking and education that are not. But if you shut down your coal industry, then the money that actually makes the GDP gets taken off the table. If you shut down the gas industry, the money that actually makes our nation's GDP gets taken off the table. If you shut down agricultural industry because you find it politically incorrect, the money that makes up your GDP gets taken off the table. And a very quick analogy, if I have a $10 note and I have 10 people sitting at that table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, And one person gets a $10 note and he charges one person for accountancy fees for $10, who then gets sued by the solicitor for $10. And that $10 note goes through the kitchen renovator, the accountant, solicitor, and around the table, back to square one. Then 10 times 10, the GDP of that table is $100. And only 10% of it was the person who put that $10 on the table. But if that $10 didn't turn up, the GDP of that table would be zero. Now, I'm going to tell you the name of the person who put that $10 on the table. It is the coal mining companies. It is the gas companies. It's the iron ore companies. It's agriculture. That's the person who turns up with a $10 note. And if you take that note off the table, the GDP of Australia falls to pieces.
Now, the Liberal Deputy Leader Susan Ley has slammed Anthony Albanese for attending a barbecue at billionaire Lindsay Fox's house when WA was in flood disaster. Well, what did you make of all this? I mean, should he have been there?
Look, you've got to be really careful when you're in public office. He had no problems bucketing on former Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
Precisely.
And so he opens himself wide open to people going through every iteration of what he does with a fine-tooth comb, and he can't sort of step away from it because Mr Albanese did it himself. He did it himself. And welcome to politics. If you bucket on somebody because they go for a holiday, as people should, then you're going to get hit yourself the moment you step an inch out of line when you're the government. And that's what's happening to Mr Albanese. And suck it up, brother, because you started the ball rolling on this one.
But it's interesting, though, because it seemed at the time when Morrison went over to Hawaii, the media was all over it. Like, it wasn't just the opposition. It seemed like the media was against him. But I'm not sure that that's what's happened to Mr Albanese here.
No, of course it doesn't happen because, the Labor Party have got the greatest advertising campaign of all time called the ABC, and it doesn't even go close to impartiality. I've seen their reporting on George Pell at the moment, and of course, the only way, and I don't like peeing in your pocket because it's too saccharine, but the only way you get sort of political balance in this is things such as so. Yeah.
No, keep watching Sky News is all I can say. Just 60 seconds here, Barnaby. What was your reaction to Dom Perrottet admitting that he wore a Nazi costume to his 21st birthday?
He was 21 years old. When people are 21 years old, they do lots of silly things. I remember being 21 years old and I think I did a nudie run. That doesn't mean I'm a naturalist, right? Okay. That means
I hope there are no photos of this, Barnaby.
No, I hope not. I hope not too. Mind you, it looked better then than it does now. But but that doesn't make me a naturalist, and this doesn't make him a Nazi. And what we have is just people after him. I think the Australian people are smarter than this. People in New South Wales are smarter than this. They'll say, mate, 21st, like 20 years ago, give us a break.
Barnaby Joyce, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.